What time they start plays on Broadway? Isn't it 6 minutes after the hour? 5? So we're already a minute late. I apologize for that. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I want to make sure that we're all good on the live stream. We're working on the live stream, so I'm going to vamp and be off script. Oh, excellent. I'm not going to have to vamp and be off script because I always say something wildly inappropriate. Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Enzer. I'm the editor and publisher of Sinister Wisdom. I'm so thrilled to be with you this evening. As I think all of you know, Sinister Wisdom is a multicultural lesbian literary and arts journal that we're celebrating 50 years this year. It's a nice milestone. For 50 years, Sinister Wisdom has uplifted the breadth of lesbian lives, creativity, and resistance. It is a joy to celebrate these milestones across distances and decades of fierce and luminous publishing. And I'm especially pleased to be in person with you because we really started doing events in earnest at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's so nice to see lesbians gathered in a room together. So thank you. For the benefit of people online, I'm in New York City this evening at the Graduate Center, where we are hosted by the Department of Women and Gender Studies and by CLAGS, the Center for Lesbian and Gay Studies, which is hosting the Queer Class Relations Conference this Friday and Saturday. I want to thank the Department of Women and Gender Studies and CLAGS for being our generous sponsors and hosts this evening, and in particular, thank Matt Brim, who's sitting in the back of the room. The Graduate Center is situated on Lenapehoking land, the ancestral homeland of the Lenape people. As we begin this evening, I want to acknowledge the forced displacement of the Lenape people and honor their continued presence, history, and connection to the land. For people joining us online, I invite you to do a land acknowledgement in the chat if you wish. This room, and for those of you online who can't see, we have about 50 people gathered in round tables. We dithered a bit at the beginning and thought maybe we should do theater style, but I have to say I love seeing you all in round tables. So this room and our Zoom room is filled with friends and supporters of Sinister Wisdom. I thank you all for joining us. Sinister Wisdom has been a collective endeavor from its beginnings till today. It is a labor of love and intergenerational connection carried forward by many hands, and I am so grateful to all of you who are a part of that. Our current issue of Sinister Wisdom is Sinister Wisdom 140 Golden. I meant to held up a copy. Does somebody in the room have a copy? No, oh yes, will you bring it up here for me so I can hold it up for the Zoom people? Thank you, Mel. Mel is one of the many wonderful hands making Sinister Wisdom possible. This is our current issue, Sinister Wisdom 140 Golden. We have it on hand for people this evening if you're not a subscriber, and folks on Zoom can order it through the Sinister Wisdom website at sinisterwisdom.org/SW140. I want to make two unrelated Sinister Wisdom announcements as we get started here. And people who are coming in, come in and take a seat. There's plenty of seats in the front. Which is your reward for arriving. First, I want to remind many of you, if you're based in New York, probably know, and if you're online and you follow our social media, you also know that Hive Mind Books, which is based in Brooklyn and is run by the wonderful Jules Wernerbach, is talking with the fabulous owners of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, BGSQD, at the LGBT Center in order to take it over as Donnie gets ready, as they get ready to move to the west side of the country. And Jules has been organizing a $50,000 fundraising campaign to be able to compensate the current owners of the Bureau, and also build a cafe downstairs at the center that will also support Hive Mind Books. When I last looked at their GoFundMe campaign, they were at 98%, which is really fabulous. And so if you have not donated, I invite you to join with me and donate in supporting Jules's work and keeping the Bureau alive. They have been great friends to Sinister Wisdom, selling the magazine. We've done lots of events there, and I think they're a really vital part of our collective queer lives. So if you're able to support them, I encourage you to support them at the GoFundMe campaign. The second thing is very selfish. These are new copies of my new book of poetry called The Lamed. Thank you. It officially publishes in June, but my publisher, Michael Broder, is here this evening with advanced copies, and we're selling them. I'd be happy to sign them. And so I wanted, Irena insisted that I do my own commercial and not be the cobbler whose children are walking around the shtetl with bare feet. So, the Lamed. This evening, we are celebrating with readings by 8 poets, writers, and creatives in and around Sinister Wisdom. They are, and I'm giving them in reverse order that they'll be reading, Irena Klepfisz, J.P. Howard, Alexis Clements, Meremu Chikwendu, Scarlet Gomez, Ofi Davis, Aliyah Blattner, and Sara Youngblood Gregory. To minimize my time on stage, I am going to introduce our readers in 3 groups. I'll introduce all 3 of them. They will proceed in the order that they're introduced, and then I'll come back and give introductions for the other folks. I'll say a couple words at the end, and then, of course, we have food and a little beverage. Should you find yourself parched and starved, I invite you to go and get food. Do not be parched and starved among the lesbians. We want you to be full and juicy and happy. Our first reader this evening will be Sara Youngblood Gregory. Sara is a member of the Sinister Wisdom Board of Directors, and her recent speculative poetry collection, which she has copies of this evening and will gladly sell to you and sign for you, is called Dead Boys in Space. Sara will be followed by Aliyah Blattner. Aliyah currently lives in Brooklyn, where she does nonprofit work supporting survivors of gender-based violence. Her work was recently published in Sinister Wisdom 139, Mad Dyke's Queer Worlds, which published in January of this year. Ofi Davis will follow Aliyah. Ofi is a two-spirit poet, educator, and access worker accountable to the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Now join me in welcoming Sara.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. So what I've been working on, my passion and my project for Sinisterism lately is the Butch Femme issue. It's called Butch Femme Renaissance. It's coming out fall 2027. So I thought I'd go back to the source, Minnie Bruce Pratt, who many of you I'm sure know. We also have a Sapphic classic of she, also she, he, at the back table after too. But I'm going to read one essay and then I'm going to read one poem from my poetry collection. This is called Roses. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, great, thank you. This is called Roses. In the summer, she comes to visit me, and I decorate my bedroom with jugs of roses. Blousy pink and yellow roses from the fence around the house I share with 2 of the 4 lesbians I know in town. I pick her up at the bus station and bring her to my room, where I burn candles and sandalwood incense, and we slide between my cool sheets. In the winter, I drive across North Carolina to stay with her at the Charlotte Women's Center, where she's being a resident manager. We lie in bed next to the radiator, naked in the steam heat, and she says she plans to change her name to something warmer. She tells me a story about the mountains, how one morning when she drove to work, it was so cold and early that the clouds froze in the bare tree branches, arms full of snow roses. She's a writer who's been telling me stories since I met her at a state women's conference. She was the only woman there who spoke as an out lesbian. She is a skinny, flat-chested, tough blonde butch who is also the mother of a boy child. She brings me roses when we go out on a date. Our evenings are nothing like my college blind dates, like the one from the Kappa Alpha frat man who reminded me that Robert E. Lee had been a Kappa Alpha too, and then silently handed me his whiskey bottle in a brown paper sack to hold while he drove. Nothing like my dates with the Theta Chi president who needed a sorority sweetheart in time for the homecoming parade. Me in a Red Bull suit waving from the back of his convertible, a dozen red roses in my lap. And during our evenings together, she and I talk politics and words. What is lesbian? What is revolution? She knows the drastic dykes, the women who I expect to show up at meetings in black leather jackets and chains, and instead wear flannel and jeans and hippie dresses. She writes for a local lesbian literary magazine, Sinister Wisdom. I think she knows more about being a dyke than I do. Is that because she's a butch? We don't talk about this, and we don't talk about masculinity. We just talk about ending oppression by men. Sometimes we talk about how we should both drink less, and then for a while we do. When I drive down to see her, I wear a blouse open over a man's undershirt. When I pay for my gas, the attendant points to a 16-wheeler in the lot and asks, "Is that your truck?" If he's joking, I don't care. Maybe I can drive into a third space that is lesbian, not woman, not man. I'm ready to live outside of femaleness, the hedge of roses, thorny and beautiful, that has encircled me wherever I've sat waiting. Once, when I tried to write my way out, the poets who were men said to me, "Beauty is its own excuse for being." Now I make poems for her where her vulva petals turn into blade-sharp teeth. I caress the edge of her sex with my tongue. But one evening, after we've made love, after we've both been drinking too much, she says to me, "You're so good at this, you could sell it." I am speechless with rage. I have no way to reply. Roses are sold on the street. Are bruised petals furious thorns, the same as paper money crumpled in the hands of the seller? If anyone knows who Minnie Bruce is writing about, I'd love for you to find me after, by the way. I have my speculations. Um, okay, I'm going to read a poem from Dead Boys in Space. This collection, as Julie mentioned, it's speculative poetry, so it blends a lot of science fiction into the writing, and it mostly has to deal with the AIDS crisis and generational grief, and it doesn't have a lot to do with Butch Femme. But I did write one bar poem with Butch Femme Desire in it, and in She, and then in, The Persistent Desire, a lot of Butch Femme writing. There were a lot of bar scenes. There was a lot of importance of dance, of dancing with someone else. And that really came out too as I was editing the Butch Femme issue. A lot of people were talking about music, the certain kind of desire that happens when like butches and femmes see each other on the dance floor. So I thought I would read a similar poem as an ode. It's called "The Center of the Universe is a Small Town Gay Bar." The bar was packed on a Wednesday and the line stretched down the road. I was wearing tights for winter. It was snowing outside. Inside, I was sweating through the nylon and the black of my dress, which dykes and old queens, dolls, and young men were hitching up as they slipped past. I didn't mind. There were so many waists and hands and fabrics, they all blended together, except for when I felt someone new press by, in slacks. There was water beating on her shoulders like a birthmark. Her chest was bound, her hair was short, and she didn't touch my hem, which is how I knew she wanted to, and how I knew she was for me. I followed her, and the music tangled up with my voice. It was so loud. We didn't speak. We danced. I was pushy, and she pushed back, and then we found our rhythm. She snapped my damn tights between her thumb and forefinger, and I laughed, which sounded like nothing over the music, or maybe like I opened my mouth and became music. When I read her lips, and she said, "You have the smallest teeth I've ever seen," which is not a compliment exactly, but something that instead says, "I am looking at you hard," which is all that matters when the music is so good and the lights follow no particular pattern, except when she dips her lips down to meet mine. "What's your name?" I say, but I already know. Later, she'll remind me how she loved me first, but for now, it is enough to sweat into each other's mouths, surrounded on all sides by strangers and the coming day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's such a privilege to be able. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's such a privilege to be able to read with so many incredible poets and organizers and creatives. The project of my work is really rooted in exile poetics and making queer feminist interventions in Jewish literary and cultural production. So the three poems that I'm going to read are kind of moving from the biblical to the historical to a modern relationship. So this first piece is called Picklock. When you locked the back door, I drew a map on the kitchen table, marking exits, broken latches, half-open windows, gaps just wide enough to shimmy outside. I grew up here. I know the left drawer sticks, requires two rough shoves to slide back into place. But I could not survive trapped in that house. So I backed out the driveway, sped down I-5 with a half-zipped duffel in the passenger seat. I lit Shabbat candles in a motel bathtub, shoved wet towels beneath the door to occlude whiffs of smoke, refusing to stand closed-mouthed at my father's elbow as he made kiddush. Ritual was my first language, a system of grammar in which I drowned. So when I found the rabbis posed as archivists committing arson behind closed doors, I swung both legs over the sill of my bedroom window and dropped from the ledge. I am exiled from a community in exile. When I could not resist picking the locks of history, I wiggled bobby pins until barrels caught. I dreamed the snap of a wishbone, then buried both halves in the dirt. And yes, I miss braided bread, sniffing at vials of cardamom and cloves, because I descend from a people who wandered deserts for 40 years. My ancestors wept for a homeland, failed to arrive. When these women cry out to me, Hinenu, here we are from the margins of our tradition, I grieve the wilderness because no key waits for us beneath the mat. The second poem is called From the Cutting Room Floor. I remember you, lemon puckered in free fall, afraid to lick the honey dribbling down your thumb. You gathered the fabric along my ribs, pleats crisp, the accordion deflating, shriveled valves slouch low in their seats. We pinned cheap cloth to dimpled flesh, guided the rotary cutter over chalk outlines, butterflying bellies beneath fine blades. You handed me a pair of pliers, taught me to flex my elbow, rip white roots from red gums, and at night, you left the door unlocked so I could stuff myself full. Illuminated in slinking dawn, slumped over the dining room table, disemboweled, frothing clumps of polyfill. We extracted junk cells, snipped, hemmed, our bodies a testing ground, like the sofer whiting out in Allegassen from inked psukim, like the last name my great-grandfather threw overboard in New York Harbor. I knit front slip back into kasha varnishkas and hot sauerkraut, late-night Titian and rain-splattered newspapers, skimming the Freuenwinkel behind the counter of my family's book bindery, before the pogroms, before white flight suburban sprawl, before my brother forgot how to count to 4 in Hebrew. My round belly's an archive, the only record I have left of the appetites that ferried everyday women across oceans to sew piecemeal garments by hand for fractions of a cent. This history I failed to starve away, almost scrapped on the cutting room floor. I unseat thimble from thumb, shears abandoned on my bedside table. I make myself a plate, trade my sewing machine for a thick slice of good bread. And this is the last poem, and it's called In This Letter I Can't Send, I Will Tell You. In this letter I can't send, I will tell you how I arranged dried baby's breath in a marinara jar beside the landline as the damp ends of my hair curled around my ears. I washed the dishes in my house slippers, diluted a bottle of Miss Myers before scrubbing the counters clean. And I did not wait for my nails to dry, but remembered to leave the windows open, listening to Sleater Kinney on case speaker while the air purifier whirred. I noticed your sister's squash blossoms rotting in the garden bed and said nothing. I wore your favorite lip gloss on the F train beneath my mask where no one would see. And last night, I dreamt we walked our bikes up the driveway, your house key in my back pocket. The cicadas rubbed their legs while I counted your breaths, reluctant to say goodbye beneath the porch lights. I cannot forget those songs we sang that first Shabbat morning, our voices high and sweet as we praised God. And I cannot forget when the sky rained salt, because a part of you saw yourself reflected in me and looked away. On Saturday nights, I imagine you drowning braided candles in red wine, wicks thrashing until flames extinguish, low sizzles subsisting into silence. I imagine circling you 7 times beneath a canopy, shattered glass at our feet. That last time, I told you, women like us must have come before, because halakha was written against them. And one day, I might even convince you that women like us will also come after, as long as we fight to pave their way. Thank you.
I'm really thankful someone shorter than Sara came before me. Thank you. Hi, my name is Ofi. I'm going to start today sharing some excerpts from an essay written by Beth Brandt, who is a Mohawk lesbian. The essay is called The Good Red Road. It's featured in the 1994 collection, Writing as Witness. And Brandt wrote, "The key to understanding Native women's poetry and prose is that we love unashamedly our own. Our work is considered too political, and we do not stay in our place, the place that white North America deems acceptable. It's no coincidence that most Native women's work that gets published is done so by the small presses, feminist, leftist, or alternative. When I was asked in 1983 to edit a Native women's issue of the feminist journal Sinister Wisdom, I did not expect the earthquake that a gathering of spirit would cause. Eventually, this work became a book published in 1984. Perhaps there is a lesson here. When Natives have the opportunities to do our own editing and writing, a remarkable thing can happen. This thing is called telling the truth for ourselves, a novel idea to be sure, and one that is essential to the nurturance of new voices in our communities. Writing does become the good medicine that is necessary to our continuation into wholeness. And when we are whole, our voices sail into the lake of all human experience. The ripple effect is inevitable, vast, and transcendent. And indeed, Beth Brandt's life and work has made my life and work possible. So thank you to Sinister Wisdom for giving Beth Brandt a chance, and yakoke to Beth Brandt. Now I'm going to share an excerpt of a long poem I've been working on for 2 years now. I appreciate y'all's time and attention because it is long, but I will be up in my allotted time, I swear. The long poem is called The Year of the Eclipse. In my dreams, I see a shrike impale a want over the nearest trench and shriek. I am implicated in its summer, long red arc of months opening, a bird's beak foregrounding the moon, the fluttering tongue of sun rising and retreating, vital centimeters of sediment. Yes, I tell time through the growing of hair and the cutting of hair, and in this way, yes, time is another thing done to me. A pain demanding the erotic sight of asking and needing to take. See, the year is nowhere close to over, and the atrocities burst anew and again and again. Yes, the spring is vomiting its promises all over these graves, giving me a chance to kneel and weed. And beneath, I am shaking, resisting an American ending. I have nothing epiphanic beyond what I have given you already, a slice of morning. What am I looking for? Revenge or liberation? Watching them colonize on Instagram Live, I oscillate wildly between sugar and war, salt and wonder, cocktail and drought, laughing at the end of a long day and feeling the accusation of that, yet expecting a new thread of hope to make my body its embroidery. It doesn't. And sadness, like the neediest expectant animal, sits, wilting and wealthy, on my waist. I am so tired of caring, so tired of caring for this animal, unashamed and exorbitant, all its eyes effete and effortless, orbiting the world and blinking, insisting on blinking, The animal without language is waiting and licking itself, blinking its milksop eyes and weighty as all its legs are exhaustively wet. Yet still, I am turning to tell the land about you and what sound can longing make other than a whimper. Under the sky which has seen it all, beside the cacophony of finches and fire trucks, I am a dyke in love, interrupted 100 times by my own hand on my heart. Yes, and love has been the most important thing for me my whole life. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Sara, Aliyah, and Ofi. And thanks especially for bringing Minnie Bruce and Beth into the room. Our next two readers are Scarlet Gomez and Meremu Chikwendu. Scarlet Gomez is a queer Dominican Bronx-based poet, writer, zine maker, and founder of Poetry House, LLC. She's currently working on editing an issue of Sinister Wisdom. Meremu Chikwendu writes fiction that centers queer women in the Nigerian diaspora, exploring migration and identity with tenderness and complexity. Meremu has a short story forthcoming in the Sinister Wisdom issue, Butch Femme Renaissance. Scarlet.
Hi, everybody. Okay. So I don't have anything cool to say about my poems, so I'm just going to read them, if that's okay. I've been to the future. Yeah, I've been to the future, and they told me they were looking for you. Discovered your journal in the archives, all your annotated textbooks heavy with the dreams America pinned into your schedule and deferred. It feels impossible now, don't it? Legislation sealing language in aphonic detention centers, personality paragraphed into personal statements to convince somebody's father you are worthy of making it out the hood, just for the interviewer to say they going with somebody else. Well, that's America's way anyway. Forever chemicals, loans haunting credit scores, food deserts, addiction, pandemics, whistleblowers, live shooter drills, banned books, outlaw genealogies, genocide, pests in buildings where we don't know our neighbors. It feels impossible now, don't it? If today don't want me, where the hell am I supposed to go? But that ain't what the future told me. I took 3 trains into a time machine and got off exactly where you figured it out. Solve problems you didn't even create, ain't that something? Figured a way through a loaded gun and ain't nobody had to go missing, The world didn't explode. There are no more Christmas fires, the Hudson don't stink. Brooklyn and the Bronx got farms again, the black apple picks in the fall, that's why they looking for you. It ain't so impossible to do it, I swear. When nobody else showed up, you still did. Appeared like a menace and stuck like a song. I'm saying I've been to the future. The American dream ain't got a damn thing on you. When they find you, tell them about your teachers, the community health doctors, the nurses, the social workers, the activists who died before sound festered behind a door America closed for you, before the words slipped out of the gap between that door and the floor. When they find you, tell them how you held on to your sister and your brother and your auntie and your uncle and your neighbor and the kids and the kids and the kids. Tell them how you were there. When they find you, tell them how it all began. And I have 2 more for you. One of them is really short, but I was feeling left out with some of the love poems, so I added a little sonnet in there. Okay, this one is an affirmation poem inspired by Assata Shakur. I believe in loving you even if you go. I believe in sun-baked salves from fire escape gardens. I believe in wells, infinite love beneath a Leo moon. I believe in my body, written out the world and given legs. I believe in clean air on my street. I believe in rainwater that doesn't kill. I believe in legacies, but I see that I've been getting erased. Left in bent fragments on speculative text, all my stories existing only in mirrors, parked lined with busted beer bottles instead of trees, and I've been chased like a dog on the loose, surveillance whirring and police sirens, harassed and desired by Klansmen praying against me. They wish I would disappear, lie on my back, but I am earlier than thought, and they are just men. And if I learned anything, it's that a man is just a man is just a man, and I will always be. I believe in return. I believe in the world and in lovers. I believe land would keep us if we took care of it. I believe trees would answer if you told them a story. I believe even if the heart breaks, it is always, always whole. And I write to keep myself alive. Okay. And thank you so much, guys. Also, I forgot to say I wanted to dedicate that first poem to Sinister Wisdom's 50th anniversary. I think it's so amazing that, well, lesbians have been organizing like before that, but I think it's so cool that we have this literary journal that has been going for 50 years and on and has expanded beyond its original idea. And that's, it's really exciting to be a part of that. So thank you for all of this work. And this last poem is called Secret Crush. Ghost of my sunset in August, heart choice, knows not a strong enough spell, it won't work when I say it. She has made my voice into snow, reading God sonic, won't seer of my soul's garden, bird, I beg you to come near. Put your face in me, so I can then turn your breaths into sighs, so I can make whipped butter of your pleas. Touch the water of my spirit with just your hand, promise to do it with your mouth. Take my moon and turn it into fruit lust. I want to know every road in your town. Will you wait for me to go where you go? Will you take me to where the mangoes grow? Thank you.
My name is Meremu Chikwendu, and I just want to thank Julie and Sara for inviting me to be part of this amazing, amazing event. Thank you so much. So I just want to read one piece for you. It is a piece, you know, with all the things going on in the world, I just wanted to write about queer love. And so I'm going to read for you today about queer love. Today we walked through Prospect Park. It was partly cloudy, but the air was warm, so we stopped by the lake to watch a swan. It looked regal. Head high, white neck, black head, yellow beak, unbothered eyes. The only swan amongst the ducks. We watched as the regal swan dunked its snake-like neck over and over into the shallow waters, searching for food. We decided that there was little to no food down there, given the sheer volume of ducks. We laughed and said, "It's not the brightest swan." A child nearby looked at you and loudly said, "Mommy, is that a man or a woman?" I grabbed your hand to pull us away, but you laughed in the child's direction and said loudly back, "Neither, kid. I'm just a swan amongst ducks." I pulled us away anyway, and we giggled down the path. I pulled us out of the park and we stopped at a coffee shop because we liked the name of it, Poetic Justice. The barista had wide eyes and was too chatty. We decided it must be all the coffee, but couldn't agree on whether that made him lucky or not. We wanted to go to the library because it was March 14th, and they had an event called Pi Day, the art of mathematics. You used your phone to call a car, and when a yellow taxi pulled up, I said, "I didn't know that yellow taxis were still a thing." You said, "In this city, they are." We got to the library, but the line was too long, and you said, "Ife mi, no wahala tonight." I said, "Odimma," and we left. We started the long walk back to your place, arm in arm, exchanging more bits of Igbo, because bits were all we had of our parents' language. Kedu, ututuoma, you said. Ikebe, I replied. You threw your head back and laughed and said, of course you only know the bad words. I felt a drop of something and said, either someone spit on me or it's raining. In this city, you replied, it could be either. 2 blocks later, the sky opened up. The rain was thick and heavy. We rushed to huddle under the first awning we saw, the entrance to an apartment building. The rain was too thick to see through. It created a curtain between us and the rest of the world. I said, I wish I met you earlier. You would have met my sister. You said, if I met you earlier, you would have met my dad. We thought the rain would never end. We held hands like anchors in a storm, the rain stitching the night closed around us. The city dissolved into water and sound, and it felt like the world had narrowed to just a small, steady warmth between our palms. I thought about the number pi, and how, like pi, moments look simple from the outside, but kept unfolding the longer you stayed inside them. Thank you.
Oof. Oof.
Thank you so much. Our final 3 readers are Alexis Clements, J.P. Howard, and Irena Klepfisz, proceeding in that order. Alexis Clements edited Sinister Wisdom 101, Variations. J.P. Howard edited Sinister Wisdom 107, Black Lesbians, We Are the Revolution. And J.P. is a former board member of Sinister Wisdom. Irena Klepfisz edited Sinister Wisdom 2930, The Tribe of Dina. Alexis.
I actually brought it. So, first of all, extreme gratitude to all of you. You don't need to know, but I'm going to say I'm coming out of, I literally closed a computer like 2 hours ago after a period of very intense like life and work stuff. So I'm so grateful to be invited into this portal with all of you and like transition out of that period into something new. So I'm treating it this way. I hope all of you are treating this in whatever way it can be a portal for all of you. I also just want to think out loud for a minute because I thought this would be, because I was like, no, I have to pull down this issue I had the great good honor of being invited by Julie to edit an issue 101. And according to Julie's introduction, it was published to the day on the 40th anniversary of the publication of the first issue of Sinister Wisdom. And I didn't know that at the time, but it was a great honor. And I did something, I was a little slippery with Julie's request, and that will be relevant to the thinking out loud part of this, which is to say that Julie, for like a little over like a decade and a half at that point, I had mainly been making my creative work in theater and performance. And Julie came to me and was like, Alexis, will you edit an issue that's plays by, lesbians, really thinking of it as a theater volume. And I was like, sure. At a moment when I was questioning whether that was the place I wanted to put my creative energy. And Julie very graciously let me sort of take that and shift a little bit. And so the volume ended up being a volume about performing lesbian in the broadest possible sense of what that could mean. And so variations like the kind of composition a composer might make is really intended to kind of take some of the energy I was feeling at that moment and ask questions about what I was up to in life and also what lesbians were up to in life. And I think in this moment, the reason I wanted to sort of think out loud is anytime we're celebrating a big sort of anniversary or birthday, it invites questions about lineage or legacy or ancestors. And as someone who has been thinking about that a lot lately, I just wanted to name, like, I really feel like I got to witness something when I was making this volume in my conversations with Julie to make it. And also I was responding to something in the early 2010s that I was feeling where there was a desire among some people who identified as lesbians to put a pretty strict boundary around what that meant to them. And also some people from the outside trying to throw around what lesbian could and should mean. And so I really appreciate and want to always reflect anytime something has endured in my experience and from having made a film about queer communities that endure in spaces, that in order to endure, you have to change. You can't actually stay fixed, right? Like lineage and ancestry are often thought of as this sort of, right, blood or a purity, racial purity even, which is really a toxic and maybe even fascist way of viewing things. And so I really appreciate the opportunity Julie gave me in taking something and making it something different. I appreciated watching her also take sinister wisdom and making it something new and different. And it has continued to grow and shift in beautiful ways. And also just, I really appreciated all the contributors kind of questioning what lesbian can be in the world and who can claim that and how they can inhabit it. And that is a topic I don't seem to tire of. And so I'm going to read just a bit of an excerpt from a film and prose project that I recently completed called There Must Be a Word. That is about how identity, sex, and geography intersect and lead to change and lead to the shifts in all three of those elements. So I'm picking up towards the end. There might be things that make no sense, but I invite you to just roll with it. There's a quote from the late poet Nikki Giovanni that I jotted down in a notebook the summer before she died, at a time when I was working on an early draft of this. We use our talents to share the vulnerability in our hearts. I think a lot about the tension between our vulnerability and a society bent on projecting a sense of invulnerability. That tension defines so much that's toxic and violent in our world. To admit one's needs, to admit how hard it is to meet them, and to acquiesce to the discomforts, the challenges, and the deeply humbling work of trying to meet them anyway. Friends have asked me about dating, so context a little bit. I'm exploring geography and my relationship to geography in this film, or in this film and prose piece, and LA is one of the spaces in which I talk about that. So friends have asked me about dating while I was in LA that summer. I tried to explain my experience, that sexuality and gender showed up differently than in New York City, and I wasn't there long enough to adapt, to settle into the difference. People wanted specifics, but it was hard to pin it down without reducing things too much, oversimplifying. Having read Japonica Brown Saraceno's book, I wondered how long it would take for me to change, for my desires to shift. Having spent my childhood learning over and again, every time I moved or changed schools, that assimilation is innate, instinctual, I knew that it would happen, that my primate programming would win out. My need for others demanded I adapt. I want to be clear that this is not about engaging in some kind of sex tourism, seeking out exotic experiences. In most ways, that's the opposite of what I'm trying to pin down. I've often heard people write or talk about movement as a way to encounter an essential self, But instead, I wonder if it doesn't prove just how uncanny we actually are, most especially to ourselves, and most especially when we don't have a fixed position to hold us. I'm not suggesting that a fixed position can't be lived into. Instead, I'm trying to speak to my experience of not having a singular geographic anchor, and I suspect this is becoming the experience of the majority of people for wildly diverging reasons. Moving across state lines, across borders, highways, and trails, political and geographic space is, I think, the norm for many rather than the exception, whether by choice or by force or some mix of the two. That said, I have to acknowledge too that I didn't fully come to terms with my sexuality until I stayed put for a while, until the process of assimilating stopped being my primary task. And so for me, my sexuality is deeply tied to place, even as I see it shifting across terrain. Legibility is a trap, but just as notably, one needs to be in some way readable to meet and receive the desires of others. You must signal in a way that attracts. From Brown Saraceno, we do not become entirely new people on moving. Instead, we feel who we are in a new way. The most personal of questions, who am I, is in fact answered collectively. Our most private selves are in fact deeply social and stunningly responsive to what is around us. I'll end there. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm JP Howard, and it's great to be here. Thank you to everybody who's watching us online as well. I also want to thank Julie, as well as Sara. Thank you all so much, and everybody who's here and who's online. Happy 50th anniversary to Sinister Wisdom, and I also brought my copy. This is the edition that I edited, Black Lesbians, We Are the Revolution. And it was very much inspired by who I call my poet ancestor, Pat Parker, who said the day that we bring all the parts of ourselves to the table, we would have a revolution. And that line has always inspired me. It's how I live my life. And it was what inspired this edition. So I'm just going to start with a few pieces from there. And so the first poem I'm going to share is by Cheryl Boyce Taylor, an amazing friend and Black lesbian poet, educator, and contributor to Sinister Wisdom. Beloved country. 20 years later, I watch her sleep, pillow as gown. Did I see her face or mine? Two uneven amulets, nipples like the face of God. Did her hands or mine trace tips of thighs down to that beloved country where the righteous dance wide against this ample day? And the next poem from here I'm going to read is by Arissa White, an amazing writer and Black lesbian friend, and we're both Cave Canem fellows together, so this is my sister friend. This is called Whole and Nothing But. My body feels true against your body. I swear the truth. This sentence found an end. Start meets beginning. Chest to chest, I swear. True as the dusk we love. My lifelines deep in the kink and kitchen of your hair. I got your cornrows. You got me by the breasts. Between our teeth, we need no standing translation. All right. And I have to share Cheryl Clark, Living as a Lesbian. This was Sapphic Classics, but it was also Sinister Wisdom 91 as well. And Cheryl Clark is a poet, and now she's a friend, but I discovered her work in Barnard probably around the same time that I discovered Sinister Wisdom many years ago. So I'm just going to read one poem from here. Since my lover left the city without warning for a less carcinogenic zone, someplace in the desert where she can stop hating her own people, my sister passes the night with me, who'd rather be drowning in the deep blue sea. My lover having left the city without warning, my sister passes the night with me and speaks of the murders of Hampton and Silkwood, of the blood of Santiago and Soweto, stores her handgun in the night table, passes the night with me, and plays the record player loud, and I remember the words of a lost slave song. So, and the rest of the poems are all going to be mine. All right. Pride poem, or why I write my story. I write my story so a woman somewhere knows that she can love another woman and still live. I scream my story because once I too was scared of what other folks would think if they found out it was a woman's touch I craved. In a room full of strangers, I take the mic and reminisce about a woman I loved who once broke my heart because I want another woman to know I'm still here. I repeat the names folks have called me, Dyke, Bulldagger, Leslie, because those names have never defined me. Sometimes I cry when I say the names of women who were killed just for loving their reflection, like Sakia Gunn. Each night, it is a woman I come home to, and every morning I wake to a woman's voice. After all these years, it is still a woman who centers me. Thank you. And this next poem is dedicated to my two sons. My wife and I have two sons. They're now young men. In this house, we raise our voices. We are raising up Black boys in this house. In this house, some days our voices stay raised high. Other nights, we are soft whispers. Black boys are becoming Black men in this house. In this house, Black boys blossom, Black boys bloom, Black boys cry or laugh, Black boys be brilliant in this house. This is a Black boys' house filled with love. We don't let fear into this house. We know fear intimately, but we don't let it into these doors. This is a safe house for Black boys becoming Black men. This is a safe house for Black men who were once Black boys. This is our house, and these are our sons. Now, this next poem might date me, but that's okay. So I'll mention some places in here that if you've been around in New York for a while, you might recognize some of the spaces. Poem for the queer spaces where love blooms in New York. Some days I have no words, just memory of her scent as she leaned in to kiss me. My bar stool melted, the club became a spinning wheel, and everyone around us disappeared. The beat, beat, beat of house music, her lips fire against my neck when she whispered, "I've dreamed about kissing you every day since we met." I repeated that line to lovers in New York clubs over the years. It was true each time I whispered or begged or texted, "I've dreamed about kissing you every day since we met." Oh, how I've loved the scent of women in clubs, sweaty bodies drenched in Egyptian musk. The rhythm of DJs helped us forget the world beyond those club doors. Roll call. I remember all the New York ladies' clubs, each one a new adventure. I kissed beautiful women in the Click Club, Cubby Hole, the box, and on the second floor, crazy nannies in the back by the bar. I once kissed a secret lover in a public corner windowsill of Henrietta Hudson's on Halloween Eve. A lavender skeleton dangled above us. She slid her hand under my shirt, and I whispered, "I've dreamed about kissing you every day since we met." We were young and free, all our bodies sexy. We pushed up against one another on dance floors, butches and Oxford wingtips, femmes and stilettos, swirling, swirling until the music stopped. Thanks. High bun love letter to Laura. Dear Laura, guess what, girl? Yesterday, I found all the love letters you wrote to me my freshman year at Barnard. I kept every damn letter, apparently. I started reading them last night, and girl, I remembered all the love and joy and silliness and sexiness and sense and nonsense and poetry that 19-year-old you and 18-year-old me shared. Young love, first loves. Girl, they ain't nothing quite like it. You and your smooth swag way with words. I've forgotten how you hyped me up Love letter after love letter. Probably the worst thing you could do for the emerging Leo. I'm joking, girl. You gave me the confidence I lacked, and our love was a real, live, tangible thing. I'd forgotten all those poems you wrote for me at the end of every few love letters. You were my first poet. I could not wait to sit with those letters in a quiet space and reflect. Laura, I am so fucking mad at you for dying unexpectedly. I could not run and call you or text you that I found every love letter you wrote me freshman year. You are the first person I wanted to call. Thank you, Laura, for the gift of your words and all that love and all those decades of friendship that lasted long after our young love fest ended. Your love letters hit me hard this week, and yet all I could do was laugh and smile and cry, sweet Laura. You stay in my heart. Your love letters, the bouquet that brings me much joy. Thank you. Thank you. And this is my last poem. My last poem is also a prompt. So the assignment would be, if you could not remember your future self, what kind of love note, what kind of love poem would you write? Dear future self, if I should ever forget you, this is my love note to you. You were loved. You were somebody's lover. You were loving. You held parts of all the women you loved somewhere deep in your generous heart. You were heartbroken. You were a heartbreaker too, girl. Sometimes you were heartache. Your heart never grew heavy, though. I remember that about you. You were silly. You were giggles. You were somebody's mama. You always wanted to be a mama. Mama was the greatest title you ever had. You were jealous as fuck. You were selfish. You were sad. You held other folks' sadness, especially mama's sadness. You buried that deep in our heart. You were swag, girl. Leo charm and confidence. Couldn't nobody crack you up as much as yourself. You were cute and you were vain. You wore lipstick under your mask during a pandemic because you were cute and you were vain. You loved your family. Your lover loved you for decades. Sometimes you would ask yourself, how I get so lucky, girl? You loved people. You were at home, on a stage, in front of a mic, sitting with community in a circle, or talking one-on-one with a friend for hours on end in a coffee shop. You were a poet. You are a poet. This is your love poem to yourself, Juliet. Thank you. Happy anniversary, Sinister Wisdom.
Yeah, never fails. Can you hear me? Okay, good. First of all, I just want to say enormous gratitude to Julie Enser. I mean, I feel like Julie revived my life about 6 or 7 years ago when she came into my life. I think the remarkable thing about Julie is that she's so rooted in the present, she never forgets the past. I mean, her commitment to the past, as well as to shape and try to, I don't know what the other words, to organize the present is just remarkable. And I think it's very unusual because usually we get stuck in the past or we get stuck in the present and forget the past. And she has this unique ability to manage the two. And I just think the idea that she obviously was not an editor for 50 years, but the fact that she could keep this going is just a remarkable thing, and it's something that I'm incredibly grateful for. So thank you, Julie. So in thinking about this 50th year anniversary, I thought that what I would do to try to think about what the difference is to read two poems, one that I wrote last year, this past year, and one that I wrote 50 years ago. So whoever I was at the time, So the first one, I'm going to read the one from the present because it's rather sad, and well, it is sad, but I didn't want to leave that as the last note, so I'm going to read the younger one second. So this first one is is really a kind of biographical poem of my late partner Judith Waterman, who was a painter and who died around about 12 years ago. And it's called Double Diptych, which Julie helped me title. And I think it's in the next issue. Is it going to be in the next issue? Yeah, I think it hasn't been published yet. So there are two things about the poem. Judy, some of Judy's paintings were enormously large. I mean, they were like 14 by 11 feet. And there's reference to that. And also I use Judy's things that Judy wrote as well as things that she said to me. And when it's printed, those words are in italics, so you can distinguish them from my own words. But I think you'll be able to tell when I'm reading her words. So it's called Double Diptych, in memory of Judith Waterman, August 19th, 1936, June 5th, 2014. Both these poems are about being an artist or a writer in some form. 1, identity. My mother was against you from the moment she asked me if you were Jewish. And for years, she refused to forget or forgive your Midwestern Goyish birth. But when you first met, you proudly listed all the cheap Jewish food you found, like Yonah Schimmel's knishes and sour milk down on Houston, or further uptown in the kitchen at Atron House with its delicious flanken and even cheaper brisket. You had hair down to your waist. One day in a Bronx diner, while you were sitting at the corner at a counter drinking coffee before or after some job interview, a man demanded to know, "Hey, lady, are you a hippie?" We laughed when you told me, but later you cut your beautiful hair because you thought it stopped you from getting those office jobs you so hated. A friend reported back to you that some people she'd sent you to for an interview had asked her, why was she wearing men's shoes? Furious, you raged, I live in the country. What do you expect, high heels? Always questions about who you were, what you were, always insistence, apologies, explanations, justifications. Many years later, when we were already old, we decided to check out the West Village, where we'd once spent so much time. Of course, the Duchess was gone. How many years already? And everything else. We were stunned by the changes. We used to hang out for hours at the Italian cafe on Greenwich. It had plush chairs and overpriced coffee. Further south on 7th had been the women's coffee house, where we'd sometimes go to sober up or meet with friends. That day, while standing mute, just trying to adjust to the unfamiliar landscape, a young butch dyke approached and asked us gently, "Are you ladies lost? Do you need help?" He thought we were two elderly dykes from some small town watching for the first time the gay scene in sinful New York. We smiled and thanked her, but she got the important part right. By the way, did I mention that you were an artist? 2, in the painting. To justify the enormous size of your canvases, you wrote, I worked in an apartment in Times Square. My studio space was exactly 12 feet wide, and my paintings at 11 feet allowed just enough space for me to turn them around and upside down. I had a sense of being in the painting since it dominated even my peripheral vision. Part of the time I looked at it through my reducing lens. I should emphasize that the scale of the work in relationship to the space of the studio represented my resistance to the limitations imposed from without. Regarding smaller canvases, you said you disliked the inevitable distance between the viewer and the finished work. A large canvas, you again maintained, gives one the feeling of standing in the painting. You didn't title most of your canvases, but after your lover's suicide, you abandoned all colors and identified the new work as Black River, Tombs, Inner Wall, Outer Wall, Memorials, Coffin. In the last ones, you returned to the light and you painted the coffin as lush and overflowing with celebratory, brilliantly colored flowers. In describing your process, you said that you tried to avoid finishing them, adding that these large canvases gave you a sense of security. You once told me that you liked waking in the morning and knowing they were there, waiting. 3, the artist at work. You were a probation officer and caseworker, a recreational leader, arts and crafts counselor, an evening clerk in the picture department at the 42nd Street Library, an extra on CBS, The Secret Storm and Love of Life, an artist for CETA creating public murals and leading art workshops for seniors, an organizer banding together our building's tenants to get it designated rent stabilized, a word processor in a law office, an adjunct art instructor at Fairleigh Dickinson, North Adams, and Russell Sage, a transcriber of taped reports, an adjunct women's studies art instructor for an external adult degree program, a companion to the sister of Edna St. Vincent Millay, an instructor of evening ESL and GED classes for union members, an active member of the local AFL-CIO chapter and its negotiating committee. You were 74 when issues forced you to stop working. Since there had never been any benefits, there was no pension. 4, limitations from without. During your lifetime, you completed more than 70 oil canvases and around 450 prints, etchings, oil and watercolors on paper. Depending on your mood and circumstances, your artwork was exuberant, angry, grieving, mythic, ironic, meditative, and amazingly, often joyous. You had no plans and resisted all mention and discussion of the inevitable. But once when you were tired, you confessed, I don't have the heart to bring them to the dump. The last 4 years, you became increasingly indifferent, silent. The last time you left the hospital with its antiseptic white beds, you came home and seeing your favorite maroon-colored sheets, you said, finally, and lay down. 3 days later, you passed into the painting. Now, what I'm going to read now is something I wrote 50 years ago. And it appeared in my first book in 1975 that I self-published with a couple of other people like Jan Clausen and Ellie Vulcan and Joan Larkin. And we pretended we had a press. We all paid for our books, but we called it the Out and Out Book Press, which actually turned out to be a press in the end. But I had come out in 1973, and though I was 32 years old already, I was considered a really baby dyke. I mean, it was like I met a lot of older dykes who sort of looked on me and sort of kind of condescending a little bit. And anyway, it was at this period after I came out that I really committed myself to poetry. So I'd just like to read this poem that I wrote. It's very idealistic, and I think it expresses the mood that was, at least as I experienced it in New York, which was incredibly dynamic. Things were just hopping. This is 4 years after Stonewall. Everybody was excited, and there was a lot going on. And it's very idealistic, it's romantic, and I don't think it's really naive, because one of the reasons I wanted to end with it is because I do think we kind of need that same kind of energy now, today, and that cynicism and a lot of regret is sort of defeating. And I'd like to recapture some of that energy from that time. So this is called They Did Not Build Wings for Them. They did not build wings for them, the unmarried ants. Instead, they crammed them into old maids' rooms or placed them as nannies with the younger children. Mostly they ate in the kitchen, but sometimes were permitted to dine with the family, for which they were grateful and smiled graciously as the food was passed. They would eat slowly, never filling their plates, and their hearts would sink at the evening's end when it was time to retreat into an upstairs corner. But there were some who did not smile, who never wished to be grafted onto the bursting houses. These few remained indifferent to the family gatherings, preferring the aloneness of their small rooms, which they decorated with odd objects found on long walks. They collected bird feathers and skulls, unafraid to clean them to whiteness, stones which resembled humped bears or the more common tiger and wolf, dried leaves whose brilliant colors never faded, pieces of wood still covered with fresh moss and earth which retained their moisture and continued flourishing. These they placed by their dresser mirrors in arrangements reminiscent of secret rites or hung over delicate watercolors of unruly trees whose branches were about to snap with the wind. It happened sometimes that among these one would venture even further. Periodically would be heard vague tales of a woman withdrawn and inaccessible, suddenly disappearing one autumn night, leaving her room bare of herself. Women gossiped about a man, but eventually word would come back that she had moved north to the ocean and lived alone. She was still collecting, but now her house was filled with crab and lobster shells, discolored claws, which looked like grinning South American parrots trapped in fishnets, decorated the walls. Skulls, unidentifiable creatures were arranged in geometric patterns, and soft reeds in tall green bottles lined the windowsills. One room in the back with totally bare walls was a workshop. Here she sorted colored shells and pasted them on wooden boards in the shape of common flowers. These she sold without sentiment. Such a one might also disappear inland. Rumor would claim she had traveled in men's clothing. 2 years later would be reported she had settled in the woods on some cleared land. She ran a small farm, mainly for supplying herself with food, and wore strangely patched dresses and shawls of oddly matched materials. But aloneness was her real distinction. The house was neat and the pantry full. Seascapes and pastoral scenes hung on the walls. The garden was well kept and the flower beds clearly defined by color, red, yellow, blue. In the woods, 5 miles from the house, she had an orchard. Here she secretly grafted and crossed varieties, creating singular fruits of shades and scents never thought possible. Her experiments rarely failed, and each spring she waited eagerly to see what new forms would hang from the trees. Here, the world was a passionate place, and she would visit it at night, baring her breasts to the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for that wonderful reading. I have a couple quick announcements. First, we have a table in the back with some issues of Sinister Wisdom, some of our Sapphic classics, our 50th anniversary badge, and other fun swag. You are invited to browse. There's a link to donate if you want to give money for anything. But if you don't have money and you feel like there's something you really need, the lesbians want you to have it. I want to remind people to subscribe to Sinister Wisdom. We're supported by the community of subscribers, sustainers, and donors. We have another Zoom event next Tuesday night on Zoom exclusively, celebrating the release of Sinister Wisdom 140 with readings by Christos, Aurora Levin Morales, Joy Layden, Robin Becker, and more. In May, we will be launching a new book by Cheryl Clark, Acts of Resistance. And in June, we have a Zoom event to celebrate the reissue of Ellen Galford's The Dyke and the Dybbuk. You can find more information about our events at sinisterwisdom.org/events. Now, there is ample food in the back. I want to see everyone sitting, eating, talking, laughing, and no one can leave until the back table is free from food. Thank you all very much for coming this evening and for supporting Sinister Wisdom. If all the readers would come up for a group picture, that would be much appreciated. Two rows. So two other people in the front. That's it. Do we have a convenience stop?
I think it's yours too, of course.
Oh, wait. All right.
Everybody.
Too short to
You
be
need
in
the
the summit.
Ready yet?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone say lesbian.
More. Okay, thank you. You'll take us all on social media. I know you were
Saw
so
that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great reading. It was so great. I felt bad putting Irena after you, because you really are the, you bring it down the house, but a lot of. Okay, yes. I would have left.
Up there,
Yeah.
so excited. Yeah. I hope so lovely that. Yeah. Usually go in July. So.